I'm Judd Myers.
I'm Scott Tipton.
Welcome to Blastoff. Welcome back to our 2-episode special of our conversation with Mark Waid, one of the greatest visionaries in comic book history. It was a pleasure digging in deep to what makes this man tick. Here in episode 2, we go even deeper. Hang on, dear listeners. The cosmic rays are coming fast and furious now. The ship is heating up. Might as well sit back and relax. There's no stopping it now, and there's no telling where we'll end up. This is going to lead me to something personal that you've been okay talking about.
Yeah.
And that is, you've talked openly about your battles with depression.
Right, yeah.
You've been open about that, which is very brave.
Thank you.
The question here is, first of all, since you've been talking about it, have you had people reach out to you?
Yes, I have.
Because I know that there are a lot of people who say terrible things, but have there been people who reached out and said, thank you, I've been scared and sad?
Honestly, that kept me on social media longer than I probably should have been there. It's that because every once in a while you'd get someone who would reach out through social media and want to talk about their depression, want to talk, kids in, East Jesus, Idaho or whatever, and talk about their depression. And I'm not a therapist and I'm not a licensed professional and I can't give you advice that will change your life necessarily, but I can certainly listen to you and remind you that you are not alone in this. And that depression is nothing to be ashamed of. It is like diabetes,
right,
or whatever. It's a disease, and you a lot of times can't control it. And you take medication. And medication is a bitch because not only do you have to get it just right, but then over the years your body chemistry adjusts, and then you've got to experiment. You got to do stuff for more drugs,
right? And
yet, when I went very public about this, and not to show off, just because that's what, as you know, I'm as transparent as they come.
Yes.
If I'm thinking something, you know it. If I'm thinking something, everybody in comics knows it. And when I wrote Daredevil, that was how I drilled down to that character. I looked at that character and I thought, man, there's a guy dealing with depression issues because he's constantly having a hard time. First off, look at all the stuff he's been through, all the girlfriends that have been killed or whatever.
Right.
And then secondly, it spoke to me. And so I opened about it when we're talking about Daredevil, and it got a lot of reaching out. And then we did an issue a little bit later that was about not only depression, but about postpartum depression and really hitting that. Like it was just a godsend that we fell into that story. I just didn't realize that I could tell the story. I did my research, obviously. I went out and I talked to groups. I talked to women. I went online. I did everything I could do to tell the story respectfully. And I think I did. And we got attention from NPR. We got attention from, magazine. We got attention from all kind of websites. And I'm not saying this because, yay me. I'm saying this because that's the communicative power of comics.
Right.
It's a message on Twitter lasts 8 seconds because it rolls by.
Right.
A message on TV or on the radio, it just blips. You hear it and then it's gone. But comic book, it's right there.
Yeah,
it's right there in your hands, and you can reread and reabsorb that message as often as you want.
I wonder, because I'm sort of I'm hesitate to do this, but I'll out myself.
Good man.
When my daughter was born 15 years ago, it was a very difficult time. It was a struggle time. Yeah, and my ex-wife had postpartum depression,
right,
which sent me into a very deep spiral. Frightened and dark.
That's one of the problems with depression is it's contagious.
But what I realized was it was just a heightened level of something that had always been there.
Yeah,
and I struggled with, and I had to go see someone.
Yeah,
and I've been taking medication since she was born.
We're going to compare bottles after
this. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And it changed my life.
Yeah.
It really did. And it's interesting. I don't know people listening that will know me.
Yeah. I wouldn't pay. Exactly. You not, I won't say cover or hide that because you don't do that, but it's not something that I would assume looking at you.
Yeah.
Or talking to you. Yeah.
That's just it.
Yeah.
Just as you would not assume someone, if you have depression in you, you also don't assume that it ever happened.
Right.
Like everybody says, you're so happy.
Exactly.
You're such a good guy.
You are. You have the most positive attitude of anybody I know.
And to be very clear, it is not because I take medication.
No.
At all. It's because I'm happy with my life.
Yes.
I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
It's an aid.
The medication just sort of clears the underbrush.
Yes.
So you can have a clearer path to where you're going.
And there are other things you have to do.
Yes.
In order to
it's not
battle
just it.
with
Exactly.
it. You don't just take a pill and everything is great.
No.
And I've learned how to do that, how to manage that, and it's changed my life. One of the things that I was most scared of was taking a pill that sort of calmed the noise and the fear and the sadness, and it would take the edge off of who I was as a person.
That's a legitimate fear.
Because you have creatives who are always, if I don't drink and do drugs, and then my music won't be as good.
Right.
If I'm not dark and brooding, then my painting won't sell.
Right.
And many of those people die young.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was worried that I wouldn't have the drive.
Right.
And the desire that I had before when I was struggling all the time and getting headaches in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And sometimes staying in.
Yeah.
Yes. For many hours because it seemed easier.
Yeah.
And all the other, symptoms that come along with it. And what happened was I became a better version of myself.
Yeah.
And one that I hadn't seen since I was a child.
That's fascinating. And again, I cannot stress to our listeners at home, you've the most positive attitude of anybody I've ever met. You seem to have the most direction. You seem to have the most drive, and you strike me as somebody who springs out of bed in the morning, whereas chronic depressives, like myself, wake up and go, "Oh, Jesus, it's 8 o'clock already. I can't do this."
Right.
And I do that every day.
Yeah. But the thing is, you're attacking it in a very specific way. And one of the things that I had to do, other than just the medication, was I had to talk to somebody.
Yes.
And I it wasn't just my friends.
No.
I mean, certainly you can be open about it, but I had to go to a professional for years and sit down and say, here's what I'm feeling right now. Here's what I'm thinking about. Here's what I'm struggling with. And talk it out and get some feedback from someone who knows what it is that they're talking about, has been trained for this very thing. And it's that fear, because fear is the worst.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the worst criminal that there is, a true robber of souls. I wonder, and I want to ask you this.
Yeah.
You're a writer. You have a lot of voices in your head at all times. And you change from one person to another because you change from book to book to book more than anybody that I've ever known. Yeah. And you're on Twitter and you're on Facebook and there are people calling you and they're sending you emails and there's just a lot of noise.
Yes.
Are you worried that you take some medication, you go and speak to someone, you're open about what it is that you struggle with, you start to equal out.
Yeah.
You start to feel pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Which is starting, I see it. I see it changing as a human being.
Yeah.
And all that noise starts to become a hindrance.
Yes.
Are you worried about your writing? Are you worried about your art and craft?
Well, I am now. I've made my peace with it. I think the thing about being off medication is that for the first 3 days, it is awesome. You're seeing colors that you've never seen before. You're smelling things you've never heard. It's just you're electric, and you're thinking, "Oh my God, what have I done?" And then you crash, and it is. Your fear speaks to me as well. It's idea that am I so normalized by this medication? Is this medication sort of numbing me in the sense that it's also calming me down? Does that make my work less edgy? Does that make my work less spontaneous? Does that make my work less sincere? And it may. We're never going to find out. But that's the trade-off that you make, I think. I don't know.
I can tell you from my experience.
Yes.
That I definitely became a calmer person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people use the word numb.
Yeah.
I feel things all the time.
Exactly,
I'm not numb at all. I feel many big emotions. if anything, it became safer for me to be more like a child.
Okay.
To be more innocent.
Yeah.
To hearken back to the time where I was, a kid and
Yeah.
was unafraid
Yeah.
of things. And that calmness, not a hindrance at all.
No.
It actually matured me in a lot of ways.
I can see that.
And made me successful in my job and made me a successful father and teaching my daughter calm.
The most important job.
Teaching my daughter, the idea of a sense of wonder and a sense of childishness.
Right.
It's possible, and I'm not a professional.
Right.
But it is possible that all these things that we've talked about in comics,
Right.
this sense of wonder and awe, and the things that we looked at when we were kids and that we felt, it is possible that that is something that could be unlocked
Yes.
in you, not disappeared and made numb.
Right.
And that your work might actually benefit
That exactly.
from that, it's okay to be innocent.
Yeah. We'll never know because that's a road I can't go down that road. And you're right. I mean, I will tell you frankly that it concerns me that I literally cannot remember the last time I felt overwhelming joy. I cannot remember the last time when I looked forward to something. You see, go to the airport and you see people holding up signs. Hey, welcome back, Grandma. They're so excited to see someone. I haven't felt that way in a long, long time. I remember the moments of unbridled joy in the last 15 years because there's like 3 of them. So you remember them. So that's a fear, but then there's something there. But all I can do is work on it on a cognitive level. I can't work on it on a medication level.
Right.
And that's the hard work. So hopefully before I die of old age, I will find that, that just heartfelt leaping joy again. I don't know.
Well, I can't, you can't see it from where you are because you're inside.
Right.
But the reflection from
Please.
friends,
Yes.
I'm outside and watching you,
Yeah.
and I've known you a long time.
Yes.
I see a change.
Yeah.
And I see I see an acceptance, which right there is a big leap forward.
Big leap forward. Yes.
Which is calms something.
Yeah.
And I also, people think of you as someone who likes to pick a fight.
I just baffles me, but okay.
It baffles me too,
Yeah.
because it's not, since I've known you, you're very opinionated.
Right.
But you're not that guy who's
No.
looking to,
Looking to stir up trouble. Exactly.
But what I see already is, and even this thing with Twitter, is, what, I need to focus on my work.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what, I got some things that I need to write.
Yep.
You know what, I got to go see a friend.
Yeah. I gotta figure out my work-life balance better.
Yes.
Yeah.
That right there is a sign.
Yeah.
It's a signal
Yes.
that something is going in the right direction.
That I can leave the house more than twice a week. Yes. I agree with you. Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes I force you.
I appreciate that enormously. Yes. Yeah.
But it's an important step in the right direction, and it does take some time, and it does take a lot of work. But it takes a lot more work to not do anything.
It does. This past Saturday, unlike many other Saturdays where I just fall into a rabbit hole of something, I got up and for whatever reason, I did something for the new apartment. I forget what it was, but it's like it made it better for like an hour. And then I did something else. And then I went and finally bought a couch after 9 months. I finally bought it. By 9 months of procrastination, I bought a couch in 31 minutes. I clocked it. So, and all those things, you know what happened at the end of the day? I could barely remember the morning because it felt like the day had lasted forever. And it was in a good way. Like this day, man, if you live your life like this, it doesn't feel like a racing train going towards some horrible endpoint where you're just going to die. It just feels like, oh, I get to live in the moment. This is nice.
I look at your previous work, and you've talked about, okay, I found this part of myself, and so I could write the character.
Yep.
I found there's something in this character I can relate to, and so I did that.
Yeah.
Even if it's he wears glasses and
right.
Whatever.
Anything is a toehold. Yeah.
And you work it out on the page.
Yep.
even Kingdom Come, where you say, I was never religious. I never really liked religion.
Right.
And then I did Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
Well, you found a way.
I found a toehold. Yeah.
It was a way in, and you working it out.
Yeah.
On the page.
Yeah.
I think I foresee you doing the same thing with what you're going through now.
Yeah.
Working it out on the page, and it's not necessarily this person suffering from and this person suffering from.
Right.
It's not the suffering part. It's the after part.
Right.
Which is the elation.
Yeah.
The release. The sort of, maybe those are the things that we require in comics. Maybe comics need some medication.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Comic books could use a little therapy.
Yes.
And a little bit of the wonder injection.
That sense of wonder that is just missing. When we say comics, we mean superhero comics.
Yes.
Just to be more specific for our audience. I don't see any reason why Incredible Change bots should be affected by it.
But maybe it is something where you decide that you go and do an image book where it's a creator-owned book where it's not something dark.
Right.
It's not something that's...
I don't have it in me. I just don't. I don't have that in me to do that. It's not just me. I mean, we're going to broaden this back out to the whole audience, like we're doing.
Yeah.
But I just don't have it in me because it's just, first off, I don't believe in writing those. I believe and this is a controversial place to stand, but I believe as an author, as an artist of any kind, you have a moral obligation to the world that you can make a million arguments against that, and we don't have enough time to go into the positive, but I genuinely believe that. Secondly, it is the easy path. It is the low hanging fruit, man. I'm going to tell a dark story in comics. Well, join the club. And so Keith Giffen is a writer, artist, been at this longer than I have, said something to me really smart. And maybe this comes back to the question of how I've managed a whole career this long. I said, how do you deal with it? Because I asked him once. He's had more ups and downs than I've had, but still, he's still in the game. He said, what you do? He says, you pick the thing that you do better than anybody else, and you stick with it. And there are going to be times when you're not in demand, and there are going to be times when you're really in demand. But what happens is, whenever they think they need that thing, they come to you first because that's your thing. And in my case, I think has a lot to do with, I don't tell dark stories. I tell hopeful, uplifting, positive stories. Bad things can happen.
Right.
Horrible things can happen. But still, that's the attitude. And there are some other guys out there who are doing the same thing. We're a very small group within the macrocosm of dark. And there's room for that too. I mean, I also don't want to, in no way do I want to say that all superhero comics need to be bright and shiny and stuff. And you're not saying that either.
No.
There's room for, all I'm saying is there's room for tone. There's room for changes in tone. There's room for different tones. And that one tone of maybe not everything has to be super grim and dark is not a tone that is well serviced in superhero comics.
Right.
So I'm proud to be, if I've got to be the guy, standard bearing on that, I'm okay with that.
Todd Stashwick called it picking a lane.
Yeah.
Pick a lane and stay in it.
You can change up your pitch as you go, absolutely, but you're still playing baseball.
Right.
And you're still on the pitcher's mound. You're not playing another position.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's a good way to say it.
Thank you. I didn't know I don't know where that came from, but I'm going to write that one down. That's good.
You're doing Archie. You're doing Champions. You're speaking to a younger generation.
Yeah.
And you're pretty damn good at it.
Thank you. Twitter would disagree, but thank you.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about Twitter.
Who's that old man?
And none of them are listening right now.
That's very true.
If they are,
they're not.
They can go screw.
They're not listening. They're attacking.
I have no comment section on my.
That's very smart.
They're
not listening. They're attacking Nick Spencer.
Right.
So yeah.
But the fact that you're doing that now, that you have, you found that, hey, I can actually speak to a younger generation, is an opening, I think.
Yeah.
Because as a retailer, I'm the largest growing metric.
Yeah.
Is young teenagers, young kids coming in, many of them female.
Yeah.
They are the fastest growing readership in the comic world. And they don't care. They don't care who's writing it and drawing it.
Right.
They just want a good story.
They just want a good story.
Like we were when we were kids.
Exactly.
We didn't know who wrote it.
There wasn't even a name on it.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
So the idea that you have a whole audience
Yeah.
that aren't Twitter people,
Right.
that maybe they never read Kingdom Come.
Right.
They don't know your Flash run.
They don't know how old I am.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah.
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
All they know is there's a book that they like.
Yeah.
And they share it with their friends.
Yeah.
So pushing past all of that, the weeds of naysayers, the weeds of history, your history.
My history, yeah.
And pushing past that to get directly to the audience that you can speak to and a new generation that's growing up.
Yeah.
To me, that's a whole bunch of hope right there.
I hope so. No pun intended. I mean, I really hope. Look, I mean, I've been at that a long time. Remember, I created Impulse with Michael Ringo, and that was 20 years ago.
Right.
And even at the time, people were saying, well, who's going to read this book? It's about a happy, superpowered teenager living in a very hopeful world.
Right.
This is at the height of superheroes carrying giant blaster guns and killing people. And my answer was always, look, I don't know who's going to read it, but if somebody stumbles into the comic store and is looking for something like that, they're going to find it. That's where they can find it.
Yes.
They deserve to have a comic book for them as well.
It was ahead of its time. Because if I had that now,
you could sell the hell out of
oh
that
my
thing.
gosh,
I know. Yeah,
I have a whole section I could put that in.
It's just
there's
hello DC. Yeah.
It's true. That character alone would. I mean, oh my gosh, it would make me a lot of money.
It makes me legitimately nervous from time to time, whether there's naysayers out there or whether I'm just sitting alone at home. It makes me nervous a lot of times that I am 55 years old and I'm trying to tell stories that are connecting with much younger readers. And I find myself scared sometimes that I'm not hitting the right notes, that the audience changes so fast, that teenagers clearly are not the same as they were when you and I were growing up. All I can really do is be sincere, is try to speak to bigger emotions that we all have, and don't use words like Snapchat and woke because they're going to date really fast.
Very fast.
And no matter how many times, no matter what time context I use these words, someone will start screaming, now look at the old man using the new words.
Right,
right. Dude, shut up. I'm just trying to help.
I think that the idea of brutal honesty, it works for a young generation because they're all like, hey, we're open and we say whatever the heck we want.
Yeah.
At whatever time we want it.
Yeah.
But I can't believe I'm saying this, but I know it from the firsthand from my daughter. These kids are not, for the majority.
Right.
And we read the bad news.
Right.
Because if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
But the good news is most of these kids are not saying bad things to each other on their phones.
No.
They're talking to each other. They're communicating with each other. They're sending good photos.
Yes.
It isn't the majority that are trying to, kill one another.
Right, exactly. Yeah, encourage you to commit suicide or whatever. Exactly, yeah.
But those are the stories we see.
That's what we, exactly.
I mean, just my own daughter's network of kids, and that's pretty vast.
Yeah.
These are good kids who are using these things that they have at their disposal to talk to each other.
And exactly. And the fact that there are so few of them that are doing it in a bad, negative way, you can back up by logic. Just think of it, because those are the stories we hear in the news, yes? But we live in a 24-hour news cycle, and nothing is hungrier in this society than the news. Nothing has that appetite. Nothing it swallows things. So don't you think that if 10 times the number of teenagers were doing that kind of crap, that we would have 10 times the number of stories? Yes, we would. There's stuff that doesn't go unreported, but I'm just saying as a representative sampling, I think that says a lot. It
does. And there's a true generation of kids who they do read, they do write, they do, obviously they watch movies and play video games, but I don't truly believe that they're empty-minded drones.
No.
Or else we wouldn't see what we're seeing in the world, which is, for all the bad that's happening, there's also a revolution of young people who are saying, hey, we don't want this.
Right.
And we're all going to say no.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll openly tell you we don't believe in God.
Right.
And maybe we'll openly tell you that we don't believe in your politics.
Right.
And, no.
Right.
And that...
Can you imagine saying no when you were a kid? That age? Not a prayer. Not a prayer. The word no is only spoken by adults in my house.
That's right. Yes, it's true.
And yet, so you're right. This is the world we've come to, which is terrific.
And you get to talk about it in comics. But also, I've noticed, looking everything up, because there's some things you haven't talked to me about. Yeah. And that is the teaching that you're doing.
Yeah.
The mentoring that you're doing.
Yes.
Because you seem to be doing more of it than ever before.
It's very important to me. It's not just important because I want to tell people how to write comics. I've said this a million times before. My dream is to find a 17-year-old black kid to be writing Archie comics. That is my dream, because that's the authenticity. That's what
you realize you're going to get hit with a lot of resumes.
Bring them on. Bring them on. Let's find somebody. It is my first. It's my responsibility to pass along what I have learned. But secondly, and this speaks more to healthy self-interest, is by mentoring, you are forced to put into words and express to someone else the things, the elements of craft that you take for granted. So what that forces you to do is look at them through their eyes and go, this is how I tell a story, but now if I'm explaining to you how I tell a story in great detail, maybe I'm doing it wrong now, or maybe I need to update my bag of tools. Maybe I need to, maybe I'm wrong about the way this works, because this is the way it always works in my head, but having to say it out loud teaches me. And that's an important part of mentoring.
And do you see some of the people that you've mentored? Do you see progress? Do you keep up with them?
Yeah,
do you check in with them?
I do. And I do see progress. It's hard because this is a hard industry to make your way in, especially if you're not writing creator-owned stuff. That if you're looking for a job, it's hard to make your way in this industry. But I see the sincerity there, and sometimes I wince at the craft, but that's okay. I mean, I'm not Shakespeare now, and I certainly wasn't Shakespeare 35 years ago. So, Jesus, 35 years ago. I see the progression, and that fills me with hope. I want more voices. I don't want to teach a 22-year-old white cisgender kid to write comics. They're welcome, but we need more voices. We got to be more inclusive with the voices that that are contributing to these comics, or that are saying the thing. We're talking about the messages that I'm able to put out because I have the forum. Now this is the message. Now give them the forum. Let them have it. One of the difficulties that no one talks about is that one of the reasons that superhero comics in particular, comics in general, are not as inclusive as they ought to be, and we're making up for lost time as fast as we can, but we got a long, long way to go. But one of the reasons that we're not is because for the longest time we didn't tell stories that anybody but white boys would want to read. So generations of readers of readers, but not comics readers, have grown up not terribly interested in what superhero comics have to say, because it doesn't speak to you. It speaks to some cisgender white kid who, lives middle class. And the reason it's so difficult, not so difficult, the reason it is difficult to fix that so fast, and again, this is on us as an industry, this is not anybody's fault but ours, is that you open up the doors to new creators, and you just assume that there's a line of non-cisgender, non-white creators lined up in the Marvel offices, like lined up at the front door going around the block. That's not true. That's not true. It is, we need to look harder. We need to look for those people. We can't expect them to come to us.
Right.
And comics has always been an industry where we just expect people to come to us. There's never been a dearth of talent. There's always been some 17-year-old kid wanting to break into comics. What I just said is not an excuse for why we haven't moved faster. What I've said is not a plea for sympathy for why we have moved faster is I say this is all on us and it is all wrong, what we have done. It is an injustice to what we have done. All I'm saying is that I'm trying to tread that fine line between whining and being honest. Because I think that if I can have an honest conversation with people who are genuinely upset, and rightfully so, that comics is not more inclusive, this is one of the things I would like to have an honest conversation about, because I think talking about things and explaining things and giving your point of view and letting you understand, if you want to understand, letting you understand what my point of view is, if you want to know, is the best way to communicate, the best way to fix problems and make problems better, fix things. But that said, that is not a speech I would give to a room full of non-white, non-cisgender kids, because the tomatoes would be coming at me faster than light, right, and probably rightfully so.
Do you think they don't think that that there's an opening for them? So they don't try?
No, I think they're trying. I mean, they're trying more and more. But I think they have to see other people, non-white, non-cisgender, trying. I think they have to see material that is targeted less towards white cisgender kids.
Yes, I think there's something there.
Is if you don't, why would you even think about breaking into that industry?
Right. Because if you think about yourself as, okay, you're in your 20s and you're in the comic book industry, and the only stories that people were giving you were about a Hispanic, a middle-aged Hispanic guy who lives in Mexico.
Yeah,
you would go, what's my way in there?
If I watch a lot of TV, you watch TV. If every channel on my television was the golf channel, I would not be watching TV.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to watch TV.
Right. It's a difficult thing because you're a person that's a white man who's had a life of experience, and you're writing a story about a young black kid.
Right.
On the one hand, people will go, come on,
this
really?
is not your story to tell.
Right. But without telling those stories, then they're not there. And people are going, well, yeah, but people are buying it because they want that, that character, and they want that role model.
Right.
And this is why Miss Marvel, it works, and this is why Miles Morales is so important.
Yeah.
And this is why characters that, we normally wouldn't be thinking about the color of their skin.
No.
Because, that never happens.
Right.
Now we're seeing what's so interesting about Ms. Marvel? Well, because she's a Muslim, and you see her family praying in the mosque, but it's not a big deal.
Right.
They don't make a big deal out of it.
No.
They just go, there are families that do this.
Right.
That's what's fascinating about it.
Yep. That it becomes the norm. It not only becomes the norm, but you don't treat it as an after-school special moment. There I am, as I say, every time I sit down and write Miles Morales, I'm trepidatious because I hear the voices that say, this is not necessarily your story to tell, white man. And all I can say is, I'm not going to go into the speech about, well, it doesn't matter whether you're white or stories are stories. That may not be true anymore. I don't know. What I do know is, if I do it right, then I've done a service. And if I do it wrong and I've made you mad enough to come show me how it ought to be done, that's great too. Bring it on. Go do your own Miles Morales comic, and I will read it because you were on. I'm fine with that too.
You were a retailer.
Yeah.
You spent a few years in the trenches.
Yes.
Obviously, you spent your entire life coming into retail stores and spending money and, curating your collection and doing signings and knowing owners and knowing managers and knowing maybe even helping a few people to go from comic book stores into the industry.
Sure. Yes.
Because you like to give a foot up to people.
I welcome the competition.
Well, I think maybe some people did that for you, and so you returned the favor.
That's what you do.
But then you became, you went on the other side of things.
Yes.
And saw the difficulty
yes.
of the retail world.
Yes.
And, people listening to this, people talking to me in the store, they don't know the difficulty of the retail world. because I don't share it with them.
Nor should you. It's not, exactly, yeah.
But
I will.
there we go.
Yeah.
And talking about, not bragging, but in France, going and finding a hardcover, this Mobius book that's out of print, and oh my gosh, and I say to them, how much is it? And it's €18. And I say, the cover price? And he says, they're all cover price. And I you're kidding. These things are hundreds of dollars in America. And he says, well, it's the law.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Oh, yes. The law is everybody sells things at cover price. These are new release things. They're cover price.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to discount.
Interesting.
If you discount in your store, they'll close you.
That is fascinating.
It is an agreed upon system.
Wow.
France is the only place where Amazon does not make money on books.
Ah.
They're not allowed to discount.
Not allowed to discount.
They still have Prime and stuff.
Right, but still,
they've given up.
Yeah. Wow.
And the stores have this extraordinary unity with one another, bande dessinée. And they see that by doing it this way, they all can stay in business longer. Yeah. And they all help each other to, every store might have a different personality, but they have the same product and they sell it for the same price.
Right. So that cuts down on the friction between retailers. Absolutely.
The friction, they go, we all need bags.
Right.
So let's put the bande dessinée thing logo on with all of our store names and our store addresses.
That's great.
And then we'll all buy bags together so it's cheaper.
That's great.
And then we all go pick them up. And they all have the same bags.
Wow.
It's amazing. And all the product is returnable.
Wow.
And publishers and distributors have to accept the returns.
Wow.
So, because I asked, where do you put all these hardcovers?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Well, you have to store them somewhere. Store them.
And send them back to the publisher.
Them. I said, well, what if you have them for all these months and then they fall over and they're damaged and we send them back anyway. They accept the damages.
Oh my God.
Damaged or not, they accept the returns. What?
Why aren't we running a comic book store in France?
It's bizarro comic book stores like for what we are.
For your listeners, have you gone through the 30-second explanation of the difference between non-returnable and non-returnable?
I have never. I don't talk about it mostly.
Let's just give you a 30-second rule that for years and years, and we talked about this earlier when we were talking about print runs and how much you sell through versus how much is returned to the publisher.
Right.
In most publishing, you publish a book, your Random House, you publish a book, you sell 100,000 copies. Retailers can only move like 70,000 of them, so they'll return the other 30,000. That's the way it works. In comics, we keep prices reasonably lower than we could on the newsstands because we don't work that system. The system to us is publishers sell them to a distributor who then sells them to the retailer. Let's say publishers sell to the retailer.
Yes. And
you bought them. You're not returning these things. You're getting you're getting a good price, but you can't return them. If you overorder on Aquaman next month, you're going to be sitting on a bunch of Aquaman for the rest. You can't send them back.
Right.
And it doesn't work that way in any other publishing business that I can think of.
Yeah, all of the risk is on us, the retailer.
Right.
And the other thing for people to realize, for the average customer, all of these announcements that they make online where it says, first printing sold out, going to a quick second printing, 100,000 copies. Yeah, they sold out. To me.
To you, exactly.
Not to customers.
No, that's exactly it. They don't, it doesn't mean that customers are demanding this. It means retailers are demanding it because they think they might be able to sell more copies, but they don't know. They don't know.
And there are this many retailers who have tons of boxes, and then there are this many retailers that don't have any because they couldn't afford to order in those numbers.
Right.
Because they're one store.
Right.
And they had to order 40 copies, and that's it. So these are the things that absolutely we deal with on a regular basis, not to mention the storage and the wasted paper and the money that you spend on all of that and the difficulty of moving all of this product. And where do you move it? There's only so many places to go.
I like selling shoes. If I sell shoes for a living, I have a store and I buy my shoes I get my shoes from the manufacturer, and then those I don't sell, I do something else with. It doesn't work that way in comics.
Yes.
You're just buying everything right up front. You're in the same position as your customers are. You're just another customer.
And it's hard to earn from that, especially when the industry is based on discount wars and stores giving discounts, and this one gives 20%, this one gives 30%. The margins are terrible.
They're awful. Yeah.
I give away more product than anybody I know because I donate to the hospitals. I donate to the libraries, the drop-in centers. It's a whole other job for us.
Sure.
Dropping off product.
Sure.
It's a great tax write-off.
Yeah,
but there's only so many places that you can move this stuff to give away.
Right.
To give away.
Yeah.
And only so many boxes you can send to soldiers overseas.
Right. And only so many comics that you can actually put in the hands of just anybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, okay, you felt the pinch of that.
Yeah.
You felt the weight of the Diamond catalogs.
Yeah, God.
Which I can't believe we still do it that way.
No.
We still get those paper catalogs.
I know. It's like the Necronomicon, this thing. Every month, it's just this book you don't want to look in. And it's if you've never seen one, it is the size of a mid-city phone book.
Yes, it is.
If you've never seen a phone book, then you have no comparison. But yes, you don't know what a phone book is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's a book that looks like a phone. That's what it is. But yeah, they're huge. And you have to go through every page. It's 300-400 pages and look for things that you think you can sell to your customers. Not things that you would like to have personally, but things you think you can sell to your customers. Now, fortunately, my business partner, Christy Blanche, just ran the store and continues to do a great store.
Yes,
I've come out of the store. And she hand sells like you. She hand sells. That's what you have to put. Again, you're guessing. Every month you're guessing. Are the same number of people going to buy Superman this month that bought it last month?
Yes.
Are are people really going to be interested in this thing that there's a new Muslim character out? Ms. Marvel is premiering and she's a brand new Muslim character. Are you hoping that'll bring more people in? It might not.
Right.
Are you banking on some big, giant, blockbuster comic book event that's going to come out with praying that nothing else happens in the world today that makes the news? Mike Carlin, the editor of Superman, will back me. He said this before, and I'm just carrying his words. Yes, the death of Superman sold a bunch of comic books back in the day. But if anything else had happened in the world that day, if there'd been an economic crash, if a train had gone off the rail, anything, then they wouldn't have sold that many comics. They wouldn't have gotten the press.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the stuff you have to deal with. You're putting all your money on the line. You're buying. I cannot stress this enough. You're just another customer.
Yes.
You're just buying the comics same as anybody else. And then you can't return them. All you can do is sell them to someone else.
Right.
And hope you're selling more than you're not selling.
People think, well, so you order an extra copy too of something. Yeah. With 800 titles on your racks at an average of $3.99 per book, 800 times $4.
Yeah.
Do the math.
Yep.
These comics come in every week.
Yes. Yep.
So,
and you're buying weeks out. You're putting money out that you're having to commit to buying certain things weeks and weeks before they actually come out. It's fascinating. I mean, I used to, when I would go travel from store to store around the nation doing store signings, and I still do, I used to be upset because I'd go to a comic book store in, Okefenokee and on Wednesday wanting to buy everything that I normally buy, and they wouldn't have everything. And I'd be pissed. Like, oh, geez. Now I get it. Even if you just carried every Marvel and DC comic in depth, you're out of business tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is true. Now, on the positive side,
yes,
people are still coming in.
Yes. And
they're still desiring of this product.
Yeah.
So for the solid retailers, for the ones who I like to think I'm in that category.
Oh, yeah. I would put you in that category.
Spending every day thinking about every single person.
Yeah.
Obviously using a POS system and tracking metrics.
Yeah.
But every single person being its own island.
Yep.
And tailoring a store to those specific people.
Right.
Not thinking, well, yeah, but what about in Las Vegas?
At one point,
that's another state.
At one point, you had two stores, not the one but in your previous incarnation.
Right.
With the stores that you co-owned then.
Right.
You had a store in Sherman Oaks. And then you opened in Glendale.
It was Northridge.
Northridge.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me that you knew there'd be some difference in the customer base, but I don't think you recognized until you were in business for a while what a vast difference in the customer for two places that are 6 miles apart.
Right. And that's true now of a place that's, 7 miles from, either one of them.
Right.
And the neighborhood is vastly different. And changing every day.
Yes.
That's another thing that's very difficult when you have development and you're in a city that's developing.
Yeah.
You go, okay, this is what I order and this is the neighborhood. And then all of a sudden a Whole Foods goes up.
Yeah.
And there are all of these people that are, wait a minute, they're totally different demographics.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And they're coming in asking for something completely different.
Yeah.
So now I have to change midstream and tailor myself to them. Now, this is business. This is all, it is the cost of doing business. But unlike any other business, we are active in a way that, well, imagine this. There are a lot of grocery stores in America. We're talking.
Yeah.
Not thousands, tens of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
There are basically 3,500 of us retail stores dedicated to comic book product.
Right. There's states without one.
Yes.
There's Wyoming or Montana. One of the two is if they have one store, it is since I have last look at the statistics.
Mm-hmm. And they have to go online and get the things.
Right.
But they can't have the experience.
No,
they don't get
going
the
in the comics and the communal experience.
Yes.
Going to the comics store.
So we're a small group.
Yeah.
We used to be 12,000 strong.
Yes.
And we've contracted by 75%.
We have successfully turned a mass medium into a niche market.
Yes. Exactly.
Well done.
And yet we are completely essential as tastemakers. And it is important that, it's threaded through the eye of a needle, but we are still very, very vital and important. Now Amazon stores are going to be opening up.
Right.
And I've often said about Amazon stores, as I talked about with Borders, they were a hire away from making a problem for us.
Yes.
But they never hired that person.
Right. Yeah.
And Amazon is the same. They're a hire away from going, okay, well, we can figure this out because we can actually throw money at this.
Exactly.
And we have it.
Give me Jim Soloskowski on the phone.
Yes.
And pay him a lot of money and come here, and you're selling comics all of a sudden.
And then there's a difficulty.
Yeah.
But there's also no other real business where you get to interact with the people on a very personal level about very personal things.
How many retail stores do you go into on a regular basis where you're a repeat customer?
Mm-hmm.
I don't go in the shoe store every month. I don't build a personal relationship with a guy who's selling me shoes.
Right.
Restaurants you get, you're that's where you build relationships in terms of being a customer. But other than that, you don't build relationships at the grocery store. Yeah, you're a return customer at the grocery store, but they don't know you.
But you don't go there every single Wednesday to see what the new tomatoes
like clockwork.
are.
Exactly, yes. But you get to build that relationship, and that is what makes you successful at what you do, is that you are a gatekeeper, as the best retailers are, to making sure that the right comics get in the right hands and that new customers don't feel overwhelmed, don't feel... I can't imagine what it'd be like to be a brand new customer of comics, right? I can't. Imagine going onto iTunes, never having to listen to music before.
Oh boy,
it's that. It's the noise. The signal to noise ratio is insane, and your job, and mine when I was a retailer. Although again, I stress I didn't do a whole lot of the in-store stuff because I couldn't, because I'd be in the store. And then someone would come up to me and talk to me about Hour Man for 3 hours. And you'd see spinning clocks and coming past me in calendar pages, and I would be wanting to die.
And you go, Christy, help.
But exactly. But it's I'm a retailer. I gotta be nice to this guy. Yeah. So after that, we didn't have to do that much of it anymore. But you hand cater. You are the gatekeeper. If these customers are getting their comics from Amazon, or if they're getting them from even Hastings or whatever, back when they could. Yeah. There's nobody to help them decide what they might be interested in. They're at sea.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, a hard pill to swallow, but being a store that carries less in order to sell more.
It's just so paradoxical to me. Like looking at your store, it is a beautifully curated store. It's one of the best, most beautifully curated stores I've ever been in. And yet your stock is just exactly what you need it to be, and you're not overflowing with back issues of Aquaman. Or whatever. You're doing it. You told me once that the secret was you get your comics every Wednesday from the distributor. You told me that the secret is make that money back on Wednesday. The money that you paid to get your comics that week, make that money back on Wednesday, or as close to it as you can. And if you can't, then you're doing something, then you're ordering wrong.
Yes.
The closer you come to that, then the other 6 days of the week that's profit. That's pure profit.
Right.
Yeah.
And I go further from that and go, okay, Saturday is rent day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, okay, it's my one day of the week. Let's aim for the rent.
Yep.
It's a weekend. So if we make rent this weekend, that's another thing that we don't have to think about.
Yes. Yeah.
So the goal, which is hard to reach, but the goal is to go this week. This week, we just covered like everything we needed to.
Yeah.
So the electricity's paid, and next week is payroll.
Right.
And then you kind of you take it in that sort of chunks, those chunks. It's very difficult to do because most retailers don't. They go and open a store because it's romantic.
Right.
And they feel that sentiment.
It's the same reason people open damn restaurants. And what do we know about restaurants? That the greatest success to failure ratio in all of not retail, but just in any kind of storefront.
Yes.
Restaurants fail the most. And it's the same sort of, like you said, the romantics. It's the, if only I owned a guy, and again, go to any comic book store and you'll have people going, I wish I owned a comic book store. Good luck.
Well, take a business class.
Right.
To, do some research.
And know who your customers are.
Yes.
And don't keep buying stuff that you hope they will somehow be interested in.
Yes.
You can do a little bit of that.
It's scary.
But
it's a scary thing to go, you know what, I'm actually not going to buy this anymore and see if somebody asks.
Right.
And if they do, I can get it for them.
Right.
But I'm just not going to do it.
And not even in terms of comics. It's not, if you love Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Maybe don't buy a bunch of Game of Thrones stuff because you love Game of Thrones. Right. And your customer base may not love it as much as you.
Yes.
You have to know that stuff. You have to know whether or not your customer base is going to, how much of your taste is reflected in them.
It's a romance business. Just as I'm sure a lot of writing is about, it's romantic,
right? Yeah,
Like Hannah has said to me, Dad, it's weird because it feels like everybody wants to open a comic book store. So what do you mean? She says, well, whenever I'm in the shop, someone is saying, God, I wish I do what you do.
Yeah,
and I say, actually, it's not about that.
Right.
It's that they see that I'm really happy with what I do.
Yeah,
and they want to be happy with what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, I wish I did something that I was happy with.
Right.
And, of course, a kid says, well, why don't they do that? And I go, well, there are a lot of things that go into those decisions. Sometimes it's money. They're, afraid that they're not going to make enough money and they have their certain life. And she says, well, yeah, but you always say that if you love something enough, you'll make money at it. If you work really hard and you're really good at it.
Right.
I said, yes.
Now let's define working really hard.
Yes.
And really good at it. Those are two X factors. As again, if you open a comic book store, you better be ready to work 7 days a week.
Yep.
You better be ready to work on Christmas Eve and on New Year's and whenever else you want to open. You got to hit that.
Here is the big difference that people don't think about. And I certainly think about this. They expect to go into their comic book store where the old guy is behind the counter and he's been there for, 30, 40 years.
Yep.
And
I remember when they were a dime.
Right.
Yeah.
And, he sits on a stool because he's got bad knees and he's, he has his lunch on the counter.
Right.
And whatever it is.
That
idea that person has been there, their whole life. I don't find that romantic. I don't find the idea of sitting in an office doing a job I, really love until I die.
Right.
I don't want to be in a comic book store until I die.
No.
I'm saving for retirement.
Yeah.
I've got a 401k. I've got my health insurance is important to me. I'm putting aside money for my daughter's college. And at some point, you stop.
At some point, ostensibly, you stop. Yes. And again, that is not a slam on what you do. That is
No.
There is no dissatisfaction in you with what you do.
No.
But life has its phases. And very few people get to do something that they would do until the day they die gladly.
Right. And if I had to, obviously I would, and I wouldn't feel terrible. I'm able to still travel and do things like that. But the main thing is it's a business. Treating it like a business.
Yes.
It takes something out of it that is both good and bad.
Yeah.
But that sense of wonder, hopefully you still have that when you go into comic book stores.
I still do. It's
you see things, but you've seen behind the curtain.
I've seen the wizard back there. Yes.
Yeah.
And it does take away a little bit of the magic. Yes. But I can't imagine a time when I'm not going to go in a comic book store.
Yes.
I loved owning a comic book store. I did not love running a comic book store.
Yes.
And again, I stress I didn't do much of the running.
Right.
But
and that the store is still there and still vital
Yes.
and still going strong because
Yes.
of Christie, and it's
yeah. And that's great. But it was a serious commitment. If I didn't have at that time deep pockets back when I could afford to save for retirement, I'm going to die. I'm going to work till I die because I can't afford to retire. But at that time, it was a huge investment of money, not just the outset, not just the stuff you put in the store on day one when you open, but as I say, every week you're cutting the distributor a check for what they're going to send, and then what you're going to be able to sell. Every week you're outlaying money.
Yes, absolutely.
And you better make it back by Wednesday, or else you're in the hole.
Yes.
Yeah.
And many are.
Yes.
Having said that, there's not a week that goes by that I don't sell Kingdom Come.
Really?
There's absolutely.
No.
I reorder it.
Thank you.
And reorder it and reorder it.
Thank you.
And there's not a week that goes by that I don't. There are titles that are consistently just they go and they go and they go, and I can count on them.
Evergreens.
They're evergreens. Killing Joke sells and sells and sells.
Right.
But partially it's because of that cover.
Yes. Yeah.
It just grabs people's attention, and then once they pick it up, they go, "Oh, this looks cool. Looks like a movie."
Yeah.
And they buy it. Covers are important, but a collection of your Flash stories comes out, and the thought is, okay, this is a pretty thick collection here, and we're going to have multiple volumes, and are people going to be able to afford it? And well, yes, they do.
Oh, that's
and yes,
nice.
they can.
That's nice.
But that's because I'm more of a bookstore.
Right. That's true.
And because I promote it like that, and there are fewer and fewer bookstores,
Right.
I can more easily divine the real estate and what goes in it
Yes.
than I can, comic book periodicals.
Yeah.
Because, as I told Nikki at Dynamite a long time ago, it almost got me into a fight with him at a bar.
Right.
Was you can give me a whole bunch of Green Hornet comics. You can give me a whole bunch of Shadow comics. But you're giving me a different one every week.
Yeah.
So of different titles.
Yes.
Iterations. And I only have one spot for you.
Right.
So the Green Hornet, next week the Green Hornet Year 1 comes out, and I put that on top of the previous Green Hornet.
Yeah.
And then the next one it's Green Hornet Adventures, and I put that on top.
Right.
And there's nowhere else to put it.
No.
I only have so much space.
Right.
So once it's buried, it's gone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It just disappeared into a well,
Nobody comes in your store saying, "I need Green Hornet number 8." No one does.
Well, that's true.
Or most stores, they don't. If it's more than a couple of weeks old, a couple of months old, they're not going to come in and go, "Hey, I need," I would love to do, create a visual that shows everybody how big a space you would need to front every comic that comes out in a month. To give every comic book that comes out in a month a slot. I can't imagine. I mean, that would have to be a 30, 40 foot long shelf.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
And series of
absolutely
shelves. I'm going to get on that sometime. I'm going to get on that and just for the internet. I'm just going to make here's what it would look like if you really had to.
An actual size chart.
And that is why we don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And in Los Angeles,
Right.
It's 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
You compare that to, whatever, the Midwest somewhere.
Yeah. Muncie, Indiana.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you can get thousands of square feet for the same price.
Yep.
I say I don't want those thousands of square feet because I'd have to fill them up.
Yeah.
I
Out of
don't,
your own pocket.
Yeah, I don't want that. I don't want to carry all that other stuff.
No.
So it's a double-edged sword, but curating is it's a lot more work.
Yeah.
I find it a lot more fulfilling, and certainly as a bookstore, it's not just I sell Kingdom Come. It's I sell Kingdom Come because it's got a spot in my store. It's a piece of real estate right in the center of something, and it works there. So that's where it lives.
Excellent.
And if you do that for every title that you sell regularly,
Right. All the evergreens.
the evergreens, it's reassuring, and it's one thing that I just don't have to think about.
Yep.
Because I know that it works.
Right.
Not the same with periodicals, but it's you have spurts because of event books and stuff like that. But I think maybe it would be beneficial for a lot of creators to see behind the curtain.
Oh, God, yes.
A lot of creators to actually maybe do some master classes or do some, let me just tell you, like, let's talk about it.
Right.
So you can see some of the things that we're saying. Be transparent. Perfectly transparent. So that you get, not how hard it is.
No, but this is the system that you're working in. This is the part of the system that you're not familiar with. Again, that's one of the reasons I wanted to be in retail, because I've done literally everything else in comics that you can do.
Right.
Short of putting the staples in them. I've done everything. And that was the one piece I had not, delved into. So now in my head, somewhere, there's a unified field theory of all of comics, and I just haven't had the time to sit down and work it out. But it's all there. I agree with you. I would love a lot more professionals to really just to know the system, like you said, just because it's informative.
It's informative, and it helps emotionally.
Yes.
Because we're all very sensitive people, and certainly a lot of comic professionals are sensitive people, they're creators, to see it's nothing personal.
No.
It's has nothing to do with that.
Right.
But everybody takes things personally.
Right.
And I think that in the industry that we have right now, the best thing that we could do is take the personal
out of it.
Yep. And put the business in it.
Yeah.
And treat it in the way that it really needs to be treated.
Yeah.
Because the people who are most successful in business are the people who are businesslike.
Yes.
And that's why we look at, Amazon and Target and all these. Sure, they make some decisions that really suck.
Right.
I mean, for the average person.
Right.
But they're successful.
Yeah.
Because they go, it's just numbers.
Let me ask you this. You had the store in Sherman Oaks.
Yeah.
And now you have the store here.
Yeah.
And it's a vastly different store.
Yes.
Mostly because it's curated.
Yes.
Whereas the other store was trying, and again, and this is the valid way to go too, is to try to be more things to more people.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So on a percentage basis, like what's the percentage of people who came in the other store and then versus the ones who come in this store and leave with something?
Well, when I was there,
right, yeah,
they tended to, leave with something in their hands.
Right.
So I don't know what it is now, but it was this: someone might have come in for a book, but they ended up buying a T-shirt.
Right. Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I like Doctor Who. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're immediately skewing in the wrong direction.
Right. And
I now have no real. They came in for something else.
That's also not a duplicable method. You
Yes.
can't do that.
Yes.
You don't because you don't know how that worked. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of different SKUs, a lot of different items.
Yeah.
And there's this toy, and then there's this button and the magnet, and then you have to track the magnet because the magnet it's a box. It comes with 50 in a box, but there's only one Chase Batman magnet.
Right.
So everybody's looking for that Batman magnet. So you kind of have to mark up the Batman magnet so you can pay for the others.
Yeah.
Magnets that are in there. and you're tracking, and you get that from a different distributor that has a lower,
discount.
Yeah. So you're tracking all of these different things. I didn't find that fun.
No.
For me, it was not why I got into it.
Right.
I see the validity of pop figures. I do. And I see why it is that people fell in love with them.
Yeah.
I never, ever wanted to get into comic book retail to sell pop figures.
Because you're selling comic books.
Yes.
You're not here to sell Funkos.
Yes. So it's sort of like, and in my world, I understand the validity of selling periodicals. If I sell 20 periodicals at $3.99 each, so it's $4 times 20.
Right.
And then there's a discount there, which generally runs about 50% discount for most people.
Yeah.
The more you order, the better discount you get. So there's $40. I work hard for that $40 and I gamble.
Yep.
Now, there's 2 1999 trade paperbacks that I put out. 2.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to sell those 2 because I have metrics for it.
Yep.
And they have a place in the store and I hand sell it. That was a hell of a lot easier for me.
Sure.
Right? Now, you go, but you had to have periodicals to get them collected to become that book.
Yeah.
Totally valid.
Right.
Totally get that. So, okay, I have 2 books at $19.95. On the wall, I have an Avengers comic. And that Avengers comic is from 1968.
Right.
And that Avengers comic is $75.
Right.
I only have one of those.
Right.
I sell it for $75.
Yeah.
Now, I bought a collection. In that collection was that book. But there are also 10 other books. And of those 10 books, I already sold one that made me back all my money.
Okay.
So that $75 is pure profit.
Pure profit. Exactly.
And it's my profit.
Right.
It belongs to me.
But you're still selling comic books.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. That's the thing.
Absolutely. But for me, I believe I'm selling history.
Yeah.
I'm selling memories.
Right.
So, because I often say comic books are like photographs. You look at the cover and you remember who you were, the girl you liked, the bike you had, what your mom said to you.
There, exactly.
And yes, they're in a box in the closet, but you don't take out your photo albums every day.
No.
They're there. You know what photos are in there.
Right. Yeah.
And you think about them and remember the one that you're on the bike and I had the bell bottoms and I do. And the comics are like that. So I'm there selling them. I think trade paperbacks are memories too.
Yeah.
And I think that people buy multiple copies of them because they hadn't read it in a long time and they loaned it out. And
or they want to give it to a friend because they enjoyed it so much. Yeah.
That's right.
Nobody comes in and buys an issue of Aquaman because they want to give that issue to somebody else. I keep picking on Aquaman, but they'll come in and buy New Frontier.
Yes.
An extra copy because they want to give it to somebody.
Yes.
They're not going to give anybody a copy of Aquaman number 8.
And yet if I take that New Frontier, which has a beautiful Darwin Cook cover, it's just so it jumps out at you.
Right.
And I put it spine out on a shelf. The only way I sell that book is if I walk someone over to that shelf, take it off the shelf, show it to them as if it's on a shelf, flip through it and put it in their hands.
Yep.
That's the only way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, face out is, there's something like 84% more likely to buy it if they touch it.
Sure.
Because it's a tactile, thing that you own it once you touch it.
Yeah.
So they look at it and they stare at it and they dream about it and then they pick it up. Okay. A lot of books.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, there's probably more books than there are modern comics.
Right. At any given time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't put all the books face out.
No, hell no. Yeah.
So what do? You curate.
Yep.
You curate and you go, there are just some things I don't have. And that's okay. And you pick a lane.
Yeah.
You become known for that. Just like you said, you pick a lane.
Yep.
And every store has its own personality. I love sending people to go get pops at another store. I love sending people to go get gaming at another store.
Yeah.
The gaming stores.
Sure.
I love it. I'm a different kind of store.
Exactly.
And they come to me for that.
Yep.
And a restaurant.
A restaurant, but you found your success. You found the lane that you need to be in.
That's right.
And frankly, as we've discussed, if you suddenly uprooted your store and plunked it down in the middle of, wherever, Long Beach, I'm not sure that it would fly. You'd have to adapt. Exactly.
It would not work.
Yeah.
But then again, I would go, then I don't want to do it.
Right.
Because I don't want to adapt and I want to sell these things.
No.
Because of who I am, like you're a writer.
Right.
Somebody gives you a job. You're like, this is your assignment and this is what it's going to be. You find a way.
Yeah.
You go, all right, I can find a way to do this.
Yeah.
And you're a really good writer. So you bang it out and there's your story.
Right.
I did it.
Yeah.
And it's solid. You can write. If somebody said, look, I know you write comics, but we need you to help us with this journalistic story.
Right.
You go, well, I was a journalist for a little while, and I can probably help you with that.
Yeah.
For me, if somebody gave me a box of chocolate bars and some Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
I'd sell it all.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do.
Right.
I'd find the person that wants chocolate bars and Coca-Cola, and I'd sell all of it.
But how rewarding is that?
It's far from rewarding for me.
Right.
What's crazy is I'd probably make more money.
It's true. You probably would. Yep.
Because it's pennies on the dollar
Right.
and I sell them, for a couple bucks.
Yes.
But the idea is, and sort of kind of circles back to what you were talking about. You find the thing you love and you keep loving it.
Yep.
And you just keep loving it every day.
Yep.
And then you're making money because you're doing the thing you love.
Right.
And the money is okay. The money's there, and I don't have to worry about eating.
May not be great money, may not be amazing money. It's
Right.
Not, it's not, go on the Caribbean cruise money.
Right.
But it's just, it's a living.
It's a living. It's all relative. I don't have a Mercedes.
Right.
I drive a Hyundai.
Right.
But you know what? It gets great gas mileage.
Right.
And my daughter doesn't mind.
Right.
And I don't mind.
You don't need a yacht.
Absolutely not. Yeah. But I'm happy with what I'm doing. It's a choice that I make. So you going, oh, you want to be a writer?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Every day.
Every day. Or at least when you make yourself right,
Yeah.
Right? Even if it's just a couple of sentences every day.
And as Steve Martin said, be so good they can't look away.
Yes, exactly.
There you go. That's your assignment.
Yeah.
And everybody coming to you say, how do I break in?
Yeah.
Well, don't concern yourself with breaking in just yet.
Right. Learn the craft first.
How about you have the tools
Yeah.
to break in somewhere?
Yes.
And then
exactly. Writing is either really hard or really easy. Those are the two speeds for everybody. And if it's really hard more than it is really easy, you should go work at Burger King. I have no offense, but it's, why put yourself through that?
Yeah. So is there in your future anything other than comics? Is there screenplay? Is there teleplay? Is there a novel in you?
There's not a novel in me. No.
Okay.
I've been asked, I've been courted. Not only is there not a novel in me, but it's a whole different language. And I don't have the time or the energy right now to learn a completely different language. I think visually. I think in comics and in visual media, especially in comics, conflict is externalized. Now, there is internal conflict if you're writing something good with some depth to it, but basically conflict is externalized. In novel, conflicts are basically internalized. And it's a whole different show. I've been asked to do TV and movie stuff here and there, and I've dabbled here and there, but it's not as rewarding to me, I think, in large, for two reasons. One is that what I write is pretty much what you read. There's very little editorial, even if you're a mid-list writer, if you're any good at all, pretty much what you write is what comes out. There's not a lot of meddling. There's not a lot of mucking about, whereas the more money it's because there's not a lot of money in comics. The more money you put in anything and suddenly it's a movie, suddenly everybody gets an opinion. You turn in a screenplay and everybody from the janitor on up gets an opinion about what the story is and how you did it right and wrong. And there's nobody in history. Right. There's very few people in history who have written a screenplay and then the movie comes out and it's exactly word for word what they wrote.
Yes.
It's never that.
Yeah.
With comics, it's that. I get and also the immediacy of it. I write something and like 3 months later,
there it is.
You got it in the hand. Yeah. That's one of the reasons that I can't ever leave comics. I can't, and this is the reason that I will always make that my first priority. Secondly, I didn't get into comics to be a writer. I had no ambition to be a writer. As a kid, I dabbled with it and I did some, newspaper pieces and stuff. But as a fiction writer, I always thought, well, how am I going to come up with a new idea every couple of weeks? That seems insane to me. What I wanted to do was be an editor or work somehow in that, but I wanted to serve the characters. I didn't get into comics because I'm a tortured artist who is looking for a medium in which to express myself. I got into comics because I love Superman and I love Batman and I love Captain America or whatever. And they gave so much to me growing up. They meant so much to me growing up that to be able to give back to them is fulfilling to me. And I understand that they are not things that I own. And I understand that I can make more money doing things that I create from scratch. And I understand that a lot of people find that more fulfilling than doing corporate-owned comics with characters that at the end of the day, you don't really have anything to say about. And that's great for them. But it's not, I dabble in the other, but it's not really for me. World building is not as much fun to me as living in the worlds that these characters already inhabit.
And you've picked your lane and you're damn good at it.
Thank you. You're very kind. I muddle along. Yes. I'm pretty good. I have some skills. Yes.
Well, I obviously appreciate you bringing those skills to this table today and being so honest and transparent. It's something that's very rare and difficult to achieve, to open up yourself and, open it up to criticism and open it up to other people's opinions about things and not really care.
Right. How is there any other way to live? I don't get it. Like, just why? Why? Who likes being around people who are secretive and aloof all the time?
I hope that you can see just how devoid of fear that is. So when you're thinking of yourself and you're sitting there going, and you're doing your self-reflection, how that is the thing that freezes everyone up. And somehow you have an ease with which to push through that as if it's paper.
I have no regard for fear. I have no respect for fear. I find fear to be not only paralyzing on a personal level, but it's paralyzing to society. People are afraid of everything. And we sell fear, especially after 9/11.
Yes.
What was the business? The business was selling fear after 9/11.
That's right.
We're going to make you metal detectors. We're going to put you through security. We're going to do all this other stuff to make you feel safe.
Right.
Well, bullshit. You weren't any more safe then than you were before that, but we're going to sell you fear. And I hate that. I hate that with a blind, white, hot passion, because that accomplishes nothing. Self-preservation, yes. But really, what is there to be afraid of? How many times in your life have you thought to yourself, well, the worst thing that can happen is this, and then that actually happens? How many times is it really the worst thing that could ever happen really happen? Count them on the fingers of two hands. Isn't that generally the case?
Yes.
That's easy. It's easy for me to say. There are nuances to it. I don't have a family. I don't have dependents.
Yes.
That factors into it. I can understand being more afraid of this or that if you have dependents. I can understand being more afraid if you have like unsurmountable health problems. Yes. I can understand fear. But I just don't understand people who live with it every day. I don't get it. Why? Why would you put yourself through that? Why be afraid? I'm afraid of stuff too. But none of it's existential stuff. I'm afraid of mice. That's not, not the same as being afraid of being transparent. Who wants to be aloof? Why would you spend time with someone who is distant? How many dates have you ever been on where you didn't go to a second date because you just didn't connect because that person was just plain closed off? I got better things to do with my time.
Well, thanks for spending some of that time here today.
My pleasure.
We covered
some of it.
Yeah. We covered. So after we do a break, we're going to do another couple of hours. So strap yourself in.
I can do this. I could do it.
Oh, I
too.
know you can.
Yeah, I know.
That's why I'm ending.
Right.
No, I really, really do appreciate it. This was really, really cool. Funny enough, I actually didn't touch everything I wanted to touch on.
I see a lot of,
but it's okay.
That's okay.
It's all right, because I knew we were going to go all over the place. And it is, when you know someone, it is really sort of like, that's what's so fun. It's not an interview. Instead, it's more of a conversation. That's what
That's what you and I always say about interviews. They should be if they're not conversations, then it's just you're talking to a radio.
Well, I definitely enjoyed this conversation.
Me too,
today.
sir.
I hope all of you out there enjoyed it too. Obviously, there's a hell of a lot of content from Mark Waid that you can buy both in our store and online. And I urge you to go
try some of it, because if there are some things that you haven't read, I promise you, maybe take some time and go do some reading, because it's definitely going to be enlightening, and I hope today's show sort of shed some light on a little bit of history, both of Mark and of the industry. We'll see you all again soon. The Blastoff podcast is produced by the Colonel, Jeff Fox, Scott Tipton, and me. Original music is composed and performed by Derek Anthony Gray. You can find more of his musical compositions on his website, derekanthonygray.com.
For more information about anything you've heard us talk about today, check us out online at blastoffcomics.com. We have an active Facebook presence, so check us out over there on Facebook. And you can reach us on Twitter at blastoffcomics or on Instagram.
Or you can come by our retail location in North Hollywood in the heart of the Arts District, 5118 Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood, just 2 blocks south of Magnolia. See you soon.